This is a Sports Catastrophe production. Hey there, Heather, ho there, it's Jeff Critter, and welcome you to another Sports Catastrophe on this day. And on this day, many moons ago, in 1978, college football was at a tight crossroads. Now, of course, there's no real photo for how crazy the 1977 NCAA tournament Division I football season ended up being, but I can kind of paint you a picture. So anyway, in fact, this was the last season before Division I was turned into 1A and 1AA, which was weird because the smaller programs that would be IAA, the Sugar Bowl signed a contract guaranteeing appearance by a major conference champion. Anyhow, it meant that the SEC champion would be in the Sugar Bowl, the Big Ten title winner in the Orange Bowl, the Big Ten versus the Pac-8 at that time, in the Rose Bowl, and the Southwest champion Cotton. Anyway, the polls were huge and all that. In September, Oklahoma, Michigan, Notre Dame, USC, and Ohio State would be ranked in the top 5. Needless to say, it was huge. Oklahoma and Michigan were battling it out. But USC in week 4 lost to Bama, giving Michigan the number 1 seed, but they lost to Minnesota a couple weeks later, giving Texas the 1 seed. So Texas was the number 1 ranking going into the 4 major bowl games, the Cotton, Sugar, Rose, and Orange, that would happen on January 2nd, 1978. Now, you'd be thinking, hang on a second, why isn't it January 1st? Well, the old tradition is still true. If it falls on a Sunday, New Year's Day, the NFL gets the games for New Year's Day. It happened a few years ago. So they forced the bowl games to play on January the 2nd. So, anyway, it would be huge and all that. The Cotton and the Sugar Bowl both were notorious for starting at 1 o'clock Eastern Time. So the number 1 seed Texas Longhorns would take on Notre Dame number 5, and number 3 Bama would take on number 9 Ohio State. So the Cotton Bowl had everything going for it. But before that, the Sugar Bowl happened. Bear Bryant would take on Woody Hayes as Bama would take on Ohio State. But Bama easily crushed Ohio State in Divine Powder 35-6. So Bama would need Texas and Oklahoma, who were number 2, to actually fumble their way. But number 1 Texas knew all they had to do was beat Notre Dame, they win. And no, this is not the chicken soup game. That's the next year. So anyway, over 76,000 people turned out in Dallas to watch the number 1 Texas Longhorns try to get the national title game. However, Notre Dame's defense was huge. 5 turnovers. Vegas Ferguson scored 3 touchdowns. And Joe Montana did play in that game. Final score was 38-10. And the worst part was that Texas actually did have Earl Campbell and Johnny Lamb Jones, both great runners, injured. So thus they couldn't really play with us Notre Dame. So Texas lost. In the Rose Bowl, there was a massive upset. Michigan number 4 was hoping for a big win over Washington so that they could get some points in the rankings. But number 13 Washington won 27-20. They actually had a 24-0 lead, and Warren Moon was the hero. Warren Moon would make his mark north of the border in the CFL until he went south of the border to the Houston Oilers, and did well in the NFL. So now all Oklahoma had to do was win. And they would fall to number 1 because at number 2, all they had to do was beat Arkansas at the Orange Bowl in Miami. And they had every right to feel confident because Arkansas had an issue. The week of the game, Holt suspended Ben Cowens and the top receiver for filing team rules. Something to do with a dormitory incident. the team wanted to or basically walk out of this Orange Bowl, but the two main guys, Collins and Bobo, told them, "Don't. It'll only make things worse." So they did. So Arkansas played, and even though they lost their top runner and receiver, they actually shocked a lot of people by winning 31-6. They were 18-point underdogs. Arkansas was, and Collins' backup, Roland Sales, put up over 200 yards. And they were up 24-0. So crazy as it was, number 1 and number 2 went down. So obviously that means Bama is number 1 because they're number 3. It was disputed. This was tight. 6 teams had 1 loss: Alabama, Arkansas, Notre Dame, Texas, Penn State, and Kentucky. Penn State didn't play in a bowl, and Kentucky was prohibited because of prohibition. And the chain of command was Notre Dame lost to Ole Miss, who then lost to Bama, who lost to Nebraska, who lost to Oklahoma, and then who lost to Arkansas, who lost to Texas, and who lost to Notre Dame. So it was confusion. A lot of people said Bama obviously would get it because they're the number 3 ranked team. And after all, top 2 fell. But for some strange reason, Notre Dame, on the strength of its win over Texas, vaulted over Texas, Oklahoma, and even Bama. And Bama cried foul because it figured that if both Texas and Oklahoma lost, as the number 3 team, they would be next in line. Why they didn't get it, we don't know. The AP and the UPI electors for the final polls were really divided, but Notre Dame won the majority. It was actually 37.5 1/3 for Notre Dame for the AP, 19 1/3 for Bama, and 5 1/3 for Arkansas, because one guy actually named all 3 schools as number 1. He couldn't pick. He could have picked Bama. UPI put 23 for Notre Dame, 13 for Bama, and 2 for Arkansas. Arkansas was okay, but Bama really cried foul. And that was huge for them. The next season was the first time that IA and IAA were there, and the champions were Bama. It was so Bama got their revenge, in a sense, by beating Penn State in the 1978 Sugar Bowl to win the 1978-79 NCAA football national crown. It was 1 versus 2. It was a lucky bounce. All that Bama, the SEC champion, Penn State, they invited Penn State, so it was 1 versus 2. Penn State was an independent and was not bowl-tied. So yeah, Bama got their own back, but they cried foul. Bama's been freaking winning national championships left, right, and center under Nick Saban. So just let Notre Dame have this national title in 1978, please. Anyway, I'm Jeff Diamond. Adieu.